Columbus, Ohio, was coming alive after a long, hard winter. No one noticed the black Honda Civic that crossed the state line at 3:47 a.m. No one noticed the woman behind the wheel. She didn't look dangerous. She looked deliberate. Her name, at least the one on her forged British Columbia driver's license, was Angela Hartman. But her real name, as the world would later learn in horror, was Natalie Pierce, a 31-year-old freelance photographer from Toronto with a carefully buried past. She had no criminal record, no children, no ties, nothing to suggest that she would soon become one of the most infamous serial killers in Ohio's history. Natalie had entered the U.S. through a rural checkpoint weeks earlier, claiming she was on a photography tour of America's forgotten towns. Her camera gear was real, her story plausible. But she hadn't come to capture decay. She came to create it. In the weeks before her first kill, Natalie kept to herself in a modest 2-bedroom rental just outside Westerville. She paid 6 months in cash and asked few questions. Her neighbors described her as polite, private, and unnervingly quiet. She wasn't unfriendly. One tenant later told detectives. Just distant. Like she wasn't really there. But Natalie was very much present. Just not for what people thought. She had a mission, though no one could yet guess the pattern. Her days were spent walking neighborhoods, photographing abandoned buildings, and shopping at thrift stores. Her nights? That's when the darkness bloomed. She was on dating apps almost every night, Tinder, Hinge, Whisper, even Craigslist's underground personals. But she wasn't looking for love. She had one criteria and one only: married men. The more confident, the better. The more deceitful, the more thrilling. She used 3 different identities, each with distinct personalities. Angela the spiritual empath, Lana the seductive traveler, and Ray the lonely single mom. All of them carefully crafted, emotionally manipulative, and convincingly human. Men responded eagerly. Her first target was James Walker, a real estate agent from Worthington, who was married with 3 children. His dating profile had the telltale signs: looking for fun, not drama. His texts were filled with flattery and flippancy. Within days, he was calling Natalie, then Angela, his escape. Natalie was charming, attentive, magnetic. She never pushed for information. She let him unravel it himself. She spoke in whispers, smiled at the right times, and told him exactly what he wanted to hear. That she understood him, that his wife didn't, and that she wasn't looking for anything serious. He didn't know she was already tracking his habits, what time he got off work, where he parked his car, where he liked to meet his mistresses. She bought gloves from a gas station, a burner phone from a corner store, and a small pistol off a man she met in a gun chat forum. She had never fired a weapon before. She practiced in the woods. By April 14th, she had picked the motel. Cheap, tucked behind a gas station off the freeway, no cameras. She convinced James to meet her there under the guise of a fantasy weekend. He brought condoms and wine. She brought the gun. That night, neighbors heard 2 soft pops around 11:23 p.m., but assumed it was firecrackers. No one called police. It wasn't until the maid entered the room the next morning that the horror began. James lay on the bed, shirtless, shot twice in the chest. No signs of struggle. No signs of theft. His phone was missing. His wallet untouched. On the wall above the headboard was something strange. A smiley face carved with a sharp object. It was gruesome and meaningless, they thought. The cops chalked it up to a lover's dispute. Maybe a jealous partner. A random robbery. They didn't yet realize it was just the beginning of something far more sinister. 2 weeks had passed since the murder of James Walker, and in the quiet suburbs of Ohio, life rolled on. Police had little to go on. The motel's security cameras had been conveniently broken for weeks, and there were no usable fingerprints. The woman James had been meeting was a mystery. No ID, no surveillance, no real name. Detectives chalked it up to a reckless affair gone tragically wrong. They didn't know the woman they were looking for was already preparing for her next kill. Natalie Pierce, still living under the alias Angela Hartman, had tasted death, and it didn't scare her. It centered her. In her mind, she wasn't a killer. She was a judge, a necessary force in a world where betrayal went unpunished. She spent her evenings scrolling through dating apps with surgical precision, her thumb gliding past profiles until she found her next prey. The profile that caught her eye belonged to Marcus Green, a 29-year-old fitness trainer and gym co-owner in Newark, Ohio. Tall, chiseled, cocky. Married for just over a year to a local schoolteacher. His dating app bio read, "Not looking to change my life. Just want to feel alive again." Natalie smiled. Perfect. She crafted a new persona, Ray Thomas, a traveling sports therapist in town for a few weeks, craving authentic connection. Her pictures were edited just enough to mask her true identity. Within hours, Marcus matched with her. Their conversations were electric. She flattered his ego, played into his insecurities, and made him believe he was special. They spoke of fantasies and freedom. Natalie told him she'd be in town for 10 days. He told her his wife would be at a conference that weekend. They arranged to meet on a Friday night at his gym, long after the staff had gone home. Natalie brought a duffel bag with her camera gear, latex gloves, and a sharpened blade she had bought at a rural flea market 2 towns over. Marcus let her in, all smiles and charm, thinking it would be a night to remember. He had no idea he was about to become victim number 2. They flirted. She touched his shoulder. He pulled her closer. And just as he began to undress her, she slipped on the gloves and pulled the blade from her coat. The first stab was clean just beneath the ribs. The second went higher near the heart. He gasped, staggered backward, stunned. He asked, "Why?" She whispered, "Because you lied." He died before he could reach the exit. Natalie cleaned the area quickly, wiped down all surfaces with disinfectant, and carved her signature into the back wall. Another crude smiley face drawn with the blood pooling on the floor. She left before midnight, taking his phone and security camera hard drive with her. The next morning, a gym employee found Marcus's body slumped against the wall of the weight room. 2 men were now dead, both married, both having affairs, both killed by a ghost no one could identify. In the following days, local authorities and media were abuzz with theories. Was it a gang-related hit? A scorned lover? A coincidence? But then came the third death. Natalie had moved again, this time west to Cincinnati. Her next identity was Lana Rivers, a bohemian painter and poet traveling through the Midwest looking for inspiration. She targeted Liam Haskins, a 38-year-old painter and art gallery co-owner. Known for his charismatic charm and impulsive behavior, Liam was already notorious for sleeping with multiple women, many of them married or attached. What his colleagues didn't know was that Liam himself had a wife and 2 young daughters. Natalie met him at a small gallery showing, playing the part of an eccentric art student. She let him discover her. She let him chase her. And within a week, they were sleeping together in his studio loft. It didn't take long for her to confirm what she suspected. Liam had at least 2 other lovers and no intention of being faithful. It infuriated her. She had come to expect infidelity. But Liam's arrogance was something deeper. He mocked her dreams, minimized her feelings, treated her like a temporary toy. Natalie seethed. She waited until a stormy Thursday night to strike. Liam had stayed late to prep for an art auction. She surprised him with wine and whispered apologies. He let his guard down. He never saw the syringe she used to inject antifreeze into his wine. He began convulsing within 20 minutes. She watched him suffer, breathing heavily, her eyes wide with purpose. As he collapsed, writhing on the paint-stained floor, she dipped her fingers into his spilled blood and painted a distorted smiley face across the wall. The symbolism was hers. The smiley face was not about joy. It was mockery, a joke played on men who thought they could play her first. By now, law enforcement began comparing notes. 3 men, 3 cities, same state, same eerie signature, same lack of evidence. Ohio State investigators issued a quiet internal alert. A potential serial killer was on the move. The media didn't know it yet, but someone was hunting cheating men in Ohio, and she wasn't done. By the time Liam Haskins' body was discovered in his Cincinnati art studio, the murder had all the hallmarks of the previous 2 killings. Private location, A seemingly intimate setting. No forced entry. No signs of robbery. And on the wall, smeared in the victim's own blood, a grotesque smiley face, stretched and uneven, almost taunting. 3 men were dead. 3 married men. 3 unsolved murders in less than 6 weeks. All in Ohio. Still, it wasn't until a young detective named Haley Durham, assigned to the Marcus Green case in Newark, made a breakthrough that investigators began connecting the dots. Durham had reviewed Marcus's gym security system, or what was left of it, and discovered that the hard drive had been deliberately removed. The casing had a faint fingerprint smudge, partial and damaged, but something about it tugged at her instincts. She reached out to counterparts in Worthington and Cincinnati. When she learned that both James Walker's motel room and Liam Haskin's art studio had their electronics tampered with, she called it, "We've got a serial offender. And I think she's a woman." Her supervisor scoffed at first. A woman? Killing 3 men? Execution style? But Detective Durham saw the deeper truth. This wasn't a spree driven by rage. It was calm, controlled, planned. These weren't outbursts. They were judgments. Meanwhile, Natalie Pierce had retreated temporarily. She spent 2 nights in a motel near Dayton under yet another alias, her appearance slightly altered. She had dyed her dark hair a light auburn and started wearing colored contact lenses. She wasn't hiding. She was recalibrating. The high she once felt from killing had begun to fade. The acts didn't quench her need for justice anymore. They only fed her need for more. It wasn't just about punishment now. It was personal. Back in Toronto, Natalie's story was unknown to most. But her sealed juvenile records, buried under layers of Canadian privacy laws, held the key to her transformation. At 15, Natalie had discovered her mother brutally murdered by her father, a successful criminal defense attorney who had led a double life with 2 other women across the city. The betrayal shattered her. Her father died in prison 5 years later. Natalie buried her grief in silence. But the seed had been planted. Infidelity didn't just destroy relationships. It destroyed lives. Her next target was in Dayton. Dr. Anthony Wilkes, a 43-year-old chiropractor with a spotless reputation in his practice, but not in his personal life. Natalie found him through a discreet affair site that catered to high-income professionals seeking passion without disruption. He was arrogant, flirtatious, and quick to lie about his marriage. Under her newest identity, Camille Stone, Natalie pretended to be a pharmaceutical sales rep. She charmed him during a fake office drop-in. She left behind a business card with a burner number and a flirtatious note. Sometimes, pain needs pleasure, he texted her that same night. What Natalie didn't know was that Detective Haley Durham, now fully invested in tracking this killer, had already begun monitoring activity on these types of affair websites, suspecting the killer was using them to hunt victims. And when Dr. Wilkes made contact with Camille Stone, a flag was raised. Still, Natalie remained ahead. 2 nights after their first meeting, Dr. Wilkes invited her to his home under the pretense that his wife was away visiting family. He had candles, music, and wine ready. Natalie slipped something into his glass while kissing him. He never noticed. He died slowly, foaming at the mouth and gasping for breath. She watched, whispered, "You brought this on yourself," and smiled. Before she left, she carved the largest smiley face yet into the wooden floor with a scalpel. By the time his body was discovered the next morning, Natalie was already miles away, driving through southern Ohio toward the state line. Quiet, calm, collected. But this time there was a crack in her plan. Unbeknownst to her, her Camille Stone persona had triggered the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, which had been looped in by Detective Durham. And the partial fingerprint from the Newark gym? It had finally been cross-matched with a Canadian database. The name, Natalie Elise Pierce. Nationality, Canadian. Background, no adult criminal record, but flagged in connection with a sealed family trauma case. It was all beginning to come together. For men were dead, all married, all unfaithful, all killed by a woman no one could catch until now. Natalie wasn't just a killer. She was a symbol of vengeance to herself. A walking storm no one saw coming. But storm fronts can only stay hidden so long. And with law enforcement closing in, the game was about to change. Natalie Pierce wasn't slowing down. If anything, the killing of Dr. Anthony Wilkes had rekindled the fire. She was growing bolder, taking more risks, pushing her psychological edge to the limit. But what she didn't realize was that the FBI task force now had a name, a profile, and a rapidly developing behavioral map. Special Agent Drew Marston of the FBI's Cleveland field office led the operation. He had a military background and a sharp eye for patterns. With Detective Haley Durham by his side, they began building a timeline of Natalie's movements, cross-referencing hotel check-ins, rental car logs, and digital breadcrumbs from burner phones used around the time of each murder. Their conclusion? Natalie wasn't acting randomly. She was mapping her kills, creating a sinister arc across Ohio's urban centers. From Newark to Worthington, then Cincinnati and Dayton, it was a calculated sweep across central and southern Ohio. But where was she headed next? Marston believed Natalie was circling a final location. She's methodical, intelligent, and emotionally driven, he told reporters off the record. We think she's not just punishing infidelity. She's building toward something. A final target. A message. Meanwhile, Natalie had reached Toledo. She rented a modest apartment under the alias Amber Doyle, using a stolen identity from a waitress she'd befriended weeks earlier in Columbus. She blended into the neighborhood like a ghost. Charming, friendly, polite. No one suspected a thing. Her next target was already in sight. Ethan Caldwell, 36, a popular personal injury attorney with a wife, 2 kids, and a secret dating profile under the name Dominic Midnight. Natalie matched with him on a discreet affair app called Silk. She posed as a divorcee new to the area. He took the bait almost immediately. They met for drinks at a dimly lit bar outside the city. She laughed at his jokes, touched his hand, told him everything he wanted to hear. Within days, Ethan invited her to a hotel. This time, Natalie hesitated. Not because of guilt, but because this was the 5th. And for her, 5 wasn't just a number. It was a closing chapter. The pain she carried, the ghosts of betrayal, the emotional wreckage her father left behind. It had all been funneling toward this last act. After this, she whispered to herself in the hotel mirror, I'll be free. Ethan Caldwell died the next night in a luxury suite. Poisoned like the others. The smiley face, her signature, was painted across the hotel bathroom mirror with his blood, and underneath it, for the first time, she added words. No more lies. But freedom was no longer an option. Natalie had become predictable. That was her first mistake. FBI agents arrived at the hotel within hours of the murder. Surveillance footage had finally captured her face clearly. She'd let her guard down. The disguise was imperfect. And the waitress whose identity she'd stolen had just reported a missing driver's license. The FBI tracked her rental car through toll booth cameras headed north. By the next morning, an alert went out across all of northern Ohio and into Michigan. She was being hunted. Natalie abandoned her car near Sandusky and moved on foot, blending into bus stations and diners. She tossed her burner phone into Lake Erie. She was careful, but cracks were forming. In a Greyhound terminal outside of Cleveland, she bought a ticket to Buffalo, New York. She sat in the back of the bus, sunglasses on, hoodie up. She didn't notice the plainclothes officer boarding the bus 5 minutes before departure. At 4:13 a.m., Natalie Pierce was taken into custody. She didn't fight. She didn't run. In fact, she smiled, as if she knew the end had finally arrived. It was never about the men, she told Agent Marston during interrogation. It was about making people look deeper, about exposing the lies that kill families. When asked if she felt remorse, she replied, I felt more remorse when my mother died because of a man's betrayal than I ever did watching those cowards beg. Ohio was stunned. Canada was in disbelief. 5 dead men, all unfaithful, all lured, judged, and executed by a woman who called herself an avenger of broken vows. The trial was still to come. The headlines were only getting louder. But Natalie had made her mark. And though she sat behind bars, alone and unrepentant, one truth lingered. She never ran for revenge. She walked toward it with purpose. Media trucks surrounded the Franklin County Courthouse in Columbus, where prosecutors chose to try Natalie Pierce for the murder of Dr. Anthony Wilkes, deemed the most evidence-rich and centrally located case. Yet, from the moment Natalie was escorted into the courtroom, flanked by armed deputies, wearing an orange jumpsuit and her signature calm gaze, it was clear this would be no ordinary trial. The prosecution painted her as a cold-blooded, calculated serial killer, a woman who stalked, seduced, and slaughtered 5 men across Ohio. They described a pattern of psychopathic behavior disguised under charm and seduction. The evidence was stacked high, GPS data tracing her movements, burner phone activity tied to all 5 victims, fingerprints in Marcus Green's gym, DNA evidence under Ethan Caldwell's fingernails, her bloody smiley face signatures, consistent in each scene, and her own words, recorded during interrogation. But Natalie's defense team, led by criminal attorney Sharon Kells, had other plans. They didn't argue the killings. They argued the motive. Kells delivered a fiery opening statement that flipped the narrative. This is not a monster. This is a survivor. A woman destroyed by betrayal. Abused by a system that let a cheating, violent father walk free until he murdered her mother. And now she sits here, punished for holding men accountable in ways the world never does. It was a controversial angle, and it split the country. In court, Natalie never cried. She rarely spoke. But when she did take the stand, something most attorneys advise against, she stunned the courtroom with chilling clarity. She recounted the night she found her mother's body, how her father had been leading 2 other families in secret, how the justice system handed him a 10-year sentence for second-degree murder because of mental duress, how she was placed in foster care and grew up swallowing the rage of being silenced. Men cheat and people laugh, she said coldly. Women kill, and the world finally listens. The jury sat in silence. Some looked horrified, others strangely sympathetic. Outside the courthouse, a cultural war ignited. News outlets ran daily debates. Was Natalie Pierce a feminist vigilante or a narcissistic killer? Was this justice or genocide against men? Twitter hashtags trended. Hashtag no more lies. Hashtag Natalie the Avenger. Hashtag ruthless heart. Hashtag she snapped. Women's rights activists were divided. Some condemned her. Others said she reflected the emotional toll of emotional abuse society continues to ignore. Meanwhile, the families of the victims demanded justice. Rachel Caldwell, wife of Ethan Caldwell, testified in court with trembling hands. He lied, yes, but he didn't deserve death. None of them did. She didn't just kill our husbands. She killed our children's fathers. After 3 weeks of testimony and 6 days of deliberation, the jury returned. Verdict: guilty on all charges. 5 counts of first-degree murder. Aggravated with premeditation. No possibility of parole. Natalie showed no reaction. She looked directly at the families. And for the first time, she whispered 2 words. I'm done. The judge, visibly emotional, delivered the sentence. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. To be served in a maximum security federal facility. And just like that, the woman who had haunted Ohio's heartland was caged. But the legacy she left behind would fester for years. Books were written. Podcasts exploded. Some called her evil. Others called her empowered. Natalie herself? She gave only one post-sentencing statement through her attorney. I wasn't trying to start a movement. I was trying to end my pain. But I guess the world needed a reckoning.